Mr. Ford, you made a picture called Three Bad Men, which was a large-scale Western, and you had a quite elaborate land rush in it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you shoot that?
With a camera.
Hi, I'm Sarish Sudhakran. In this video, I'll show you how and why many of the greatest directors owe their visual and editing styles to John Ford. I'll also show how in one aspect, no one has matched him. Watch till the end to find out. For those of you who don't know, John Ford is the director's director. He made almost 150 films in his career. It's not a typo. He won the Best Director Oscar 4 times plus 2 more for his wartime documentary work. And he hardly attended any award functions.
In the absence of the winner, John Wayne will accept the award for John Ford.
John Ford's influence on Steven Spielberg is common knowledge. Let's hear from the man himself.
I try to run a John Ford film, 1 or 2, before I start every movie, simply because he inspires me, and I'm very sensitive to the way he uses his camera to paint his pictures and the way he frames things.
There are many aspects of Spielberg's style you can attribute to John Ford. Reflections and mirrors is one great example, even when they aren't necessary. I love the scene where they actually take the mirror off the wall and draw attention to it. The camera moving in to a close-up of a face at a dramatic moment is also something John Ford did a lot of. Spielberg made it his own. When John Ford made movies, the cameras were heavy. Handheld camera work was mostly non-existent. Complex blocking wasn't regular. In Stagecoach, you can see how the actors move in and out of the frame like a choreographed dance. Each actor doesn't overlap the other, either by talking or action. This ensures the audience can follow every single movement and dialogue, like following breadcrumbs. The way tracking shots are constructed are also similar. Here's a comparison. Take note of the depth of composition and blocking. The frames of both directors are rich with detail. They don't cut corners. Spielberg was definitely also influenced by the action scenes of John Ford. The breathtaking chase sequence in Stagecoach, released in 1939, is textbook cinema. The way the camera moves gracefully is also something Spielberg inherited. Of course, Spielberg took it to a whole new level. In camera movement and blocking, there's no equal to Spielberg. By the way, if it isn't clear, just because a director is influenced by John Ford doesn't mean he or she copied John Ford. Everyone is more or less influenced by someone. Even experimental cinema is over 100 years old, so there's little you can do that hasn't been done before. I think the greatest way Ford influenced Spielberg is in the casting of extras. Look at the brilliant way Steven Spielberg cast extras in Schindler's List or Munich. And now see how immaculately John Ford did the same. Look no further than The Grapes of Wrath, where almost every actor, every child, and every extra feel like they were picked through some magical mode of time travel. It's almost as if you could enter that world and live in it. It's that real. Ask any director how hard it is to cast 1 or 2 actors perfectly. Casting hundreds perfectly is incredibly rare. The great Akira Kurosawa also was influenced by John Ford. The use of wind, fire, rain, and horses are prevalent in both directors' films. I've heard when Ford met Kurosawa, he observed, "You like rain a lot, don't you?" They understood each other because they were perfectionists who couldn't stand mediocrity.
Kurosawa absolutely said, they said to him, how did you learn to, did you study particular painters? Were there Japanese painters? Were there, European painters? And he said, I studied John Ford.
Here's a scene from My Darling Clementine and Seven Samurai. We're introduced to 2 larger-than-life characters, and the objective is to show that with almost zero dialogue. Wyatt Earp decides to risk his life for a shave and some peace. Cambide does it for similar reasons, and is happy to get rid of his hair in the process. It's an incredible homage. Look at how the characters in Stagecoach are introduced one by one, and compare that to how characters are introduced in Seven Samurai. The most interesting character, the star in both cases, is introduced last, as a surprise. They almost didn't make it. You'll find tons of such influences, and I'll leave you to discover those pleasures. Like I said with Spielberg, I'm not implying one copied the other. All the directors mentioned in this video are giants in their own right. Everybody's influenced by the giants that paved the way before them. The greater the director, the greater the influence. What makes John Ford special is he directly influenced a huge number of legends. Akira Kurosawa went on to achieve mythical status. He stretched out the most suspenseful moments and reduced dialogue. He He is the very definition of pure cinema. Another way Kurosawa was influenced by Ford is in the use of shadows as a compositional technique. Ford loved shadow play, and he framed his actors through doorways or just used the shadows created by lighting to compose seamlessly pretty frames. Kurosawa, with his background in painting, just mastered composition. His compositions and elegance are unmatched. The confrontations are drawn out for greater theatrical effect, but just like John Ford, the violence is over in a flash.
And my pictures do not always show violence. Very, very few of them do. And if they do show violence, it's over very quickly. I suggest it more than anything else. I never show a long sequence, with violence. I do it quickly, or I do it by suggestion.
The director who adopted both Ford and Kurosawa styles together and amped it by 10,000 is Sergio Leone. He made westerns in which the gunfights are stretched out to full operatic effect, and dialogue is kept to a bare minimum. People just stare at each other and wait until the music stops. Then they shoot. And we hang on to every nail-biting second. You can find Ford's influence all over Leone's work. I'll highlight a quirky one. One signature technique Ford used is a surprise pan with a musical flourish. Leone did the same thing with actors popping out of nowhere. John Ford's techniques have been influencing countless directors, including one, Quentin Tarantino. Here's a comparison. Tarantino likes to have his actors talk a lot, generally about things that don't have any relevance to the plot. The actors make it interesting and it's fun to watch. John Ford's characters talk a lot too, but they mostly talk about the situation they are in and the world as they see it. There's a lot more moralizing in Ford's films. You'll also see the other signature techniques in Tarantino's films, like the zoom into a close-up, the long shot montages, and the graceful camera moves. Unfortunately, you'll also see some of the bad aspects, like insignificant female characters. Kill Bill is about a female protagonist strong enough to survive death multiple times. But in the end, when she meets the man she's after this whole time, she caves like a puppy and gives him a death he doesn't deserve. What's even more strange is why she didn't go after him immediately. As a side note, notice how the first and last to die both use children as a shield. She's hardcore, but stereotypically, mommy soft. What about Tarantino's stereotypical depictions of Asians and anybody who is not white? Samuel Jackson is never morally right. In Django Unchained, a film seemingly about racism, the main protagonist is black, but for some strange reason the main antagonist, the one who is more evil than Calvin Candy, is black too. In Pulp Fiction, the main black character gets sodomized and must be saved by a white man. When you see patterns over an entire career, they're not accidents. John Ford took a lot of flack for his depiction of women in film and anybody who was not white. He tried to make amends in later films like The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but they were baby steps. Times were different back then, but what's Tarantino's excuse?
That
all men are created equal.
I knew that, Mr. Rance, but I just plumb forgot it.
Oh, that's all right, Pompey. A lot of people forget that part of it. You did just fine, Pompey.
Back to the great John Ford. John Ford moved the camera when the actors moved. When they start moving, the camera starts, and it stops moving when they stop. This is a classic camera movement technique that David Fincher follows to a T. It helps hide the movement and keeps it graceful. This can be done for longer shots as well as simpler, quicker shots. Ford hated to move the camera unless he had to, so the intentions are quite clear. Then there's a change from shallow depth of field to deep focus. John Ford hardly used close-ups, or should I say, he hardly abused close-ups. The close-ups are softer, with shallower depth of field. Otherwise, we have a lot more depth in the frame. David Fincher does the same. When they use close-ups, both directors make it special. Has to mean something. That's not all. John Ford hardly moved the camera during dialogue scenes. They're typically mid-shots and long sequences of dialogue. He once famously advised John Wayne to have one dialogue scene and follow it up with scenery or a visually striking scene, and then keep repeating that formula. Fincher keeps his camera steady and simple and lets the scene play out by itself. After a dialogue scene, the next one is a visual scene of some sort. The wide shots are classic frames without any virtuoso camera technique. At most, a simple pan of the camera. You get the idea. Whether they know it or not, all these directors are the beneficiaries of the John Ford style.
Because Ford has been such an extraordinary influence on my life, my cinematic just enjoyment of art and life, really. And it's been such a heavy influence on me and still is.
One aspect of John Ford's style that's not often talked about is his use of the dissolve. If Kurosawa is known for his wipes, John Ford should be known for his fade to blacks and dissolves. A fade to black is not fashionable in modern cinema because a lot of people think it draws too much attention to itself. One of the best uses of the fade to black I've seen is in The Grapes of Wrath. Every time it happens, its effect is emotionally powerful. John Ford knew how and when to use dissolves. It's a great lesson that everything in filmmaking is useful when done tastefully. And that brings me to John Ford's characters. It is the aspect none of the other directors in this list have matched. Some have come close in a few movies, like Spielberg in Schindler's List or Munich, or Kurosawa in Akira, High and Low, etc. But typically these directors focus on characters who are larger than life. You won't see them in real life any more than you'll see a Spider-Man or a T-Rex.
Would you say that courage was something that one acquired or something that one was born with?
Well, how do you expect me to answer that?
Your films are full of courageous people. Your activities in the war are full of courage.
I am really a coward. I know I am. So that's why I did foolish things. And I was decorated 8 or 9 times. Trying to prove that I was not a coward. But after it's all over, I still know that I was a coward. I've always found that the little quiet little man that nobody pays any attention to usually has more guts. They use guts in BBC?
Sure.
Has more guts and courage than the big blowhard, the big noisy, the big outspoken fellow. It's the little man that does the courageous thing.
John Ford's characters could be giants like Wyatt Earp or Abraham Lincoln, but somehow you can relate to them. But that's not why his characters are special. What is most special about John Ford's characters is that they are kind. They have kind faces, they have kind eyes, they talk kindly, and behave like human beings. They believe in doing right, and even if the villains are the epitome of evil, they just want to be heard. Most likely you'll feel empathetic to their cause. It is a casting and writing decision spanning 100+ movies over several decades. Just like brilliant camera work or editing or amazing chase scenes or deep, rich frames and world building, it took work and never happened by itself. The casting and writing choices clearly show the inner workings of the kind giant known as John Ford.
Back in the 60s, Orson Welles was interviewed, and one of the questions he was asked was who his favorite American directors were. He said, well, I prefer the old masters, by which I mean John Ford, and John Ford.
Fella ain't got a soul of his own, just a little piece of a big soul. The one big soul that belongs to everybody. I'll be everywhere, wherever you can look. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad. I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready.